much to talk about, really. I mean, lots of news this week, but I think we have to talk about the week in review, a historic rebound to put the S&P 500 to new highs. Isn't that crazy? Just in April, the first part of April, we were down substantially after the tariff-induced sell-off, but we've recovered all of that, Brian, and then some. Yeah. I think it's going to be one of the fastest recoveries in memory.
Yeah, and I've looked at the history of those bull markets and corrections, and this is an incredibly rapid one. The basic rule that I've found in the data is that whatever amount of time it takes to fall, it takes about like 50% longer to recover. So if you kind of think about it as far as, hey, if it takes you 2 months to decline, it typically takes like 3 months to recover. This has been a very rapid one. And it's also interesting looking underneath the surface about the rotation too. The bigger they were, the harder they fell, but also now the bigger the rebound.
And you think about, what we've been through this year. So we had all of this exuberance and crazy excitement about deregulation and the new administration. Well, that went away, and we had all of this freak out about the tariff-induced sell-off, and now we're back, especially in light of what happened this week. So it is a bit manic, for sure. But let's move into really what has moved the market. I don't think you can discount at all what has happened in Iran.
That's right. That was very critical as far as some of, I think, the almost the increased volatility that we saw in the previous weeks, because will they, won't they, how will this play out? Right. And then all of a sudden, United States goes in there and the servicemen and women deliver this rather decisive blow into 3 of those locations. And then the market actually rallies from there. Some people are really perplexed. They're like, well, if the bombs are falling, shouldn't the market be falling as well? Right. But not necessarily, because then the market can start thinking about what's happening next. How quickly will this get over? And really, the way that I've sort of looked at it is these bunker buster bombs, they were so powerful that it is actually getting Iran back to the negotiating table. So for a while, it looked like they weren't going to negotiate. In fact, that's what happened prior to those bombs being released, is they were talking to officials from the European Union, and they said, no, we don't want to negotiate. They've changed their tune quite a bit since then.
My personal feeling, I'm always skeptical. Yeah. Right? And so we're going to have to see if they really do come to the table.
Absolutely.
If they're just saying that right now to retool, we don't really know. So I think you go in with some healthy skepticism of what could be, but on its surface, if you will, it's been a pretty good outcome. And let's move, of course, to the other big news, in my opinion, was the Federal Reserve making noise, of course, and this idea of kind of a shadow chairman being floated.
That's right. Yeah, President Trump, we know he doesn't like Chair Powell, and he disagrees with him as far as how policy is being set. And honestly, I understand both sides of the story here, but the news media picked up on this idea that President Trump is going to likely announce September, maybe October, who the next chair is likely to be.
So now, and let me just jump in. Powell is in the chair.
He is.
Chair Powell is in the chair until the middle of next year.
That's right, May 2026.
Imagine having somebody come in and named to take over your job 9 months before you leave, right?
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Unless you intend to have that transition or a glide path, that's probably not going to be a very good relationship.
That's true, because sometimes that does happen, right? You want to name your successor, and then it can be an easy handoff, right? Train them. But this is not how that would be. It would be much more like that backseat driver constantly nagging and annoying.
Don't make me stop this car and turn around. I think we all know what that means.
That's right. But when I look at who are the likely nominees, the few names have been floated out there. I think they're all eminently qualified. It's not as though they're necessarily somebody fringe. I don't think it would really mark a major change in policy. Maybe they would be more biased towards cutting rates as opposed to keeping them on pause.
Yeah, that's the whole issue, right? Of course, and we see that this PCE indicator came out, and it's showing a little stickier, right? The 2.7%, so it's above what they want to get. And the last thing, of course, is the big, beautiful bill. I mean, July 4th is right around the corner, right? And we still don't know if it's going to come together, but the framework sure looks like it's lined up.
Yeah, I absolutely love the phrase bird bath That kind of entered the lexicon here, referring to the Byrd rule, which is about how it is that they can avoid the filibuster, and the Senate parliamentarians saying that some of those Medicaid cuts, that they aren't going to be able to do those. They'll probably navigate their way around it. I would not be surprised if you see a vote on this in the Senate over the weekend or who knows when, moving to the House of Representatives. And President Trump, he might have to bust some heads in order to get it across the finish line, but he's probably willing and able to do that.
Well, he is a head buster. He certainly showed what he's capable of doing. I mean, I would have not bet that there were going to be bombs dropped in Iran. So we'll see if it leads to peace. And if it does, it was the right move. And of course, lastly, the market continues to rally. And so people go, where do we go on the second half of the year? We're going to cover that as the show goes on.